folk singer is dead after she was attacked by a pair of coyotes.
What is the monkey doing? Tell me what the monkey...
He ripped your face off!
We actually have a trainer in the water with one of our whales.
If I show weakness, if I retreat, I may be hurt, I may be killed.
Baby Azaria Chamberlain was taken by a dingo back in 1980.
Hello there, my friends, and welcome back to Man-Eaters, the only true crime podcast on the entire disgusting, despicable internet, where all the killers are real animals, whether it's biting, scratchings, maulings, or clawings. We are here to talk about it. Happy New Year, everybody! A few weeks late. Welcome to the very first episode of 2026. Been goddamn excited to get to this. Today, kind of miraculously, my voice is better. I'm pretty sure I had pneumonia over the holidays. I was in New York. I got quite sick, and I've been sick for weeks, and my voice has been decimated for probably about a week. Today's really the first day that it's back, which is, to me, that's the universe giving me a cue. It is time to get us started. I've been looking forward to this so much. I've missed you. You have missed me. Maybe you haven't missed me, but it doesn't really matter. I missed you enough for the both of us. And Happy New Year. It's a new year, gang. And you know what? New year, new me. Actually, technically, it's the same me, unfortunately for everybody. It is still me, but with a brand new emphasis on trying. That's right. This year, I have decided to dedicate myself even more to my artistic and creative endeavors, I guess, for lack of a better word, including this here podcast. One of those efforts, I guess I'm going to, is doing YouTube stuff, video versions of the episodes. So, which is why you can actually be watching this. Look, I'm looking into the camera right now. I'm pointing at you. You there. Thank you for watching this video episode of Man-Eaters. Got a whole new setup, got a proper camera. I'm recording this. It's great. I've got a setup. There's not like a set. This is just my spare room where I've always been, but it looks okay. Looks all right, I guess. It's kind of dark in the back there. You can't really see anything, and I think that's fine. But genuinely, I'm so keen to be back. I'm keen to put 110% into this show this year. I just a little bit of personal news. I quit my job. Not just to do this. I'm going to do other things as well, but I really want to give this a crack in 2026. So that's what we're doing. And there's a few other changes coming our way as well. One of them, and I'm sure some of you are going to be really sad to hear this, African Drum Circle has decided to take an early retirement. I think that the constant controversies around some of the things that he's said in the past on the podcast have really got to him. I'm not going to call it like being cancelled, but he was lambasted across the internet multiple times for some of the opinions that he had and some of the things that he did. One of those things being, of course, being at the January 6th insurrection. And I'm pretty sure he volunteers as an ICE agent as well. Not good. Really out of character, you'd think, for African Drum Circle. But the good news is we do have a replacement on a trial basis. He's on probation because African Drum Circle was a lot of headaches for me. So I want to introduce you to African Drum Circle's replacement, again, on probation. We'll see how he goes for the first few weeks, and if he does well and you guys like him, he might stick around. Please welcome my friend, Indian Drum Circle. Very nice stuff there, buddy. I love it. Not a single slur, Indian Drum Circle. You're a good man. Indian Drum Circle. IDC. That's what we're calling him. IDC. Indian Drum Circle. All right, gang. Enough fucking around. Let's get into it. Now, today's story is one I'm really excited about. One of my favorite kinds of Man-Eaters episodes are the ones where we talk about an animal who I would not have expected to have killed people before. Or to have killed many people. A really good example of that would be the episode I did a year or two ago about the giant anteaters in South America. I had no idea that those animals killed people. And the animal we're talking about today, as you might have told from the funny title of the episode, we're talking about walruses. Walruses, or is it? Well, it must be like cactus, right? So it's a walrus. We're talking about walrus. I don't think that's right. It's walruses. We're talking about walruses, an animal which, on its surface, massive, gigantic animals with like knives coming out of its mouth. Of course, why wouldn't it be an incredibly dangerous animal? But I've always kind of viewed walruses as kind of goofy. You know what I mean? Like they're not really a threat. They're just these big fat seals. Like, what could they possibly do to you? Turns out they can do some pretty gnarly things to you, which is what we're going to get into in a moment on the story. So let's let's get into our, not I guess time machines a little bit. Let's get into our boats and head all the way to Greenland. I don't know why I wanted to do a story about Greenland this week. I don't know, Greenland was on my mind for some reason. Let's do that. Let's get ready to talk all about walrus. Walruses. It is walruses. So, for most of us, we tend to think of walruses less as ferocious killers and more just like funny, fat looking seals. But this really couldn't be further from the truth. These animals are enormous tusk survivors from a lineage that split from the other pinnipeds around 20 to 25 million years ago, and they evolved into one of the Arctic's most specialized and misunderstood megafauna. Now, the modern walrus is scientifically known as Odobenus rosmarus, literally meaning tooth-walking seahorse, and it actually is quite an apt name. They literally use their two massive tusks to help walk themselves across the icy plains of the north. And these animals are built for the extremes. They can weigh up to 1.5 tons, and they are made up of blubber-sheathed muscle. They have sensitive whiskers packed with nerve endings to help vacuuming up clams and worms from the seafloor, and they have elongated upper canines that are tusks used for dominance displays, hauling their bodies across the ice, and when necessary, combat. Now, historically, walruses ranged across the circumpolar Arctic in vast numbers, shaping indigenous cultures from the Inuit to the Chukchi, who hunted them for meat, oil, hide, and ivory long before Europeans arrived and nearly wiped them all out during the commercial hunting booms of the 18th and 19th centuries. Today, populations of walruses have partially recovered and are found along the coasts of the Arctic Ocean and subarctic areas, from Alaska and northern Canada to Greenland, Russia, and Svalbard. But shrinking sea ice is increasingly forcing walruses into closer and closer contact with humans. And while they are generally placid, even comical animals when undisturbed, again, funny fat seals, walruses are not harmless by any means. A startled or provoked adult can move faster than you'd expect on land, and they have shockingly good agility in the water. And those tusks, sometimes over 1 meter long, are capable of impaling polar bears, smashing boats, and in rare but very real cases, killing human beings. Walrus attacks are uncommon, but when they happen, they tend to be sudden, violent, and brutally effective. Proof that even an animal best known for lounging around on the ice is still very much a wild, territorial tank with a prehistoric toolkit. For indigenous peoples of the circumpolar Arctic, the walrus has never been a novelty or a meme-worthy oddity, but a cornerstone species, economically, culturally, and spiritually woven into the daily survival for thousands of years. Among Inuit, Yupik, Chukchi, and other Arctic coastal communities that I'm probably mispronouncing, walruses were traditionally hunted with extraordinary skill and deep ecological knowledge, providing vast quantities of calorie-dense meat, blubber that is rendered into oil, light, heat, and trade, and hides that are thick enough to be turned into boat coverings, ropes, or even armor. Now, walrus ivory, which is actually tougher and more flexible than elephant ivory, was often carved into tools, harpoon heads, needles, artwork, and ceremonial objects, embedding the animal into both the practical life and storytelling traditions of the indigenous people. Now, crucially, these relationships were governed by strict cultural protocols. Walruses were treated with respect. Hunting was often communal and regulated by elders, and waste was absolutely a taboo. Belief systems that were framed around the walrus as a powerful, sentient being that would only offer itself to hunters who behaved properly. This long coexistence also bred caution. Walruses were never romanticized as gentle giants, but they were understood as dangerous animals, entirely capable of destroying kayaks, drowning hunters, or killing people if approached carelessly or if they were wounded improperly. Now, even today, as modern firearms and motorboats replace harpoons and skin boats, many Arctic communities continue subsistence on walrus hunting under tightly managed quotas, maintaining a relationship that balances reverence, skill, risk, and necessity. One that stands out in stark contrast to the outsider myth of the walrus as a slow, harmless curiosity. And it helps explain why those who know them best have always treated them with a mix of gratitude and fear. Now, when I started digging into walrus attacks at first, I started running into a little problem with the storytelling here. The problem being that modern attacks are quite rare, they're scattered, and they're usually stripped of context. So I started by going backwards, all the way back to the beginning of the early 1900s, and that's how I ended up reading a section of 4 Years in the White North by Arctic explorer Donald B. McMillan. Now, McMillan was not a wildlife biologist, and he definitely wasn't writing with any kind of animal conservation in mind. But what his book gives us is something surprisingly valuable, a snapshot into how walruses behaved around humans before modern protections, motorboats, and climate change had started reshaping the Arctic. Now, before I get into this, it is worth kind of flagging here that 4 Years in the White North is a valuable first-hand account, but it's also very much a product of its time. It's written through a colonial early 20th century lens with blind spots around indigenous voices and animal behavior. It is useful context for what we're talking about today, but it is not a perfect or neutral record, so let's just get that clear now. So, McMillan was an American Arctic explorer, and the book, which was published in 1918, chronicles his time living and traveling in the Arctic with Inuit communities, particularly during the ill-fated Crocker land expedition. It's a fascinating mix of exploration, survival, and early 20th century ethnography. It's also very much a product of its time in its tone and its worldview. In it, McMillan discusses the local fauna of the area, including walruses, and he actually gives an account of some of the earliest known walrus attacks on humans. Now, in the book, he says, and I've probably got to do a voice here for McMillan. What kind of character am I going to make him be? He's American. He's a bit of a prick. Okay. May, June, July, and August are the harvest days, for the time cometh when no man can work. Active, energetic, full of life and the love of life, the Smith Sound native is out of bed, kayak launched and away, his piercing dark brown eyes set up in a frame of straight jet black hair, noting every ripple or movement upon the water. He is in search of the walrus. It is a wonderful sight to see the flash and dip of that paddle, the speed of that black, clean-cut body, the graceful curve of the flying harpoon, the mighty splash of a large herd of monster walrus. It is not sport to shoot musk oxen rounded up by your dogs and huddling and trembling with fear. Nor is it sport to pump a bullet into the silvery white body of a polar bear held at bay by 50 or 60 dogs. Necessity for meat is one's only excuse for such slaughter. But get into a 20-inch skin boat, only 9 inches in depth, and dash at a bull walrus weighing a ton. With no help from dogs or man, put your skill, your strength, your nerve against those long ivory tusks and the remarkable quickness of that ponderous body. An accurate knowledge of the temperament and the characteristics of a wild animal has saved many a hunter. Uncertainty as to action, however, is written all over a walrus, as shown by the large number of casualties incurred in the chase. In the Spitzbergen some years ago, a herd assumed the offensive. Upon being attacked, capsized the boat, killing every man. In 1908, a bull walrus attacked Sipsu, an Etah native, capsized his kayak, cut his throat, and left him for dead. In 1910, Arkleo, one of the best and most skilled hunters in the tribe, was attacked and nearly lost his life. The walrus whipped around when harpooned, rushed at Arkleo, and then drove his tusk completely through his arm. In 1908, some 50 walruses attacked our whaleboat, undeterred by the frightful yells of the thoroughly terrified natives who were beating the rails and water with oars, and the crash of a stream of bullets from my Winchester automatic and Borup's powerful Mauser. 2 of the animals succeeded in hooking their tusks over the rail. The following year, in a similar attack, one broke through the bottom of the boat. No, the fighting qualities of a walrus are truly to be respected and dealt with accordingly. Each year, our natives secured between 50 and 100 of these great brutes, the very best of rich red meat for themselves and the dogs, a guarantee of strength for the long white trail leading to unexplored lands, the main objective of our expedition. Oh, I kind of like that character. I like the power in that voice. Jesus Christ, is that what it feels like to be an American all the time? God damn, I want to fucking shoot something. That's awesome. Anyway, one thing comes through loud and clear in Macmillan's accounts, and that is that walruses' attacks weren't random and they definitely weren't predatory. Walruses definitely weren't stalking people. They only attacked when they were wounded, crowded, startled, or threatened, usually during hunts. Again and again, the danger spikes the moment a walrus is injured but not killed. A wounded walrus doesn't flee. It turns into a 1.5-ton tank with fucking spears attached to its face. The Macmillan describes walruses charging boats, punching holes clean through hulls with their tusks, and capsizing small craft outright. And that's another recurring theme, boats. Early 20th century hunters were often in skin boats or lightly built wooden vessels, and walruses had no trouble whatsoever destroying them. In many fatal encounters, the walrus didn't even need to gore someone. It just had to sink the boat and let the Arctic waters do the rest. He also makes a point of how differently walruses behave in groups. Now, a single animal might retreat, but herds of walruses, especially those with calves, well, they become aggressive fast. Once a walrus charged, the others followed. Panic spreads quickly in a herd, and when it does, the results are sudden and violent. What's especially telling is how Macmillan contrasts his own assumptions with the behavior of the indigenous hunters. Western explorers tended to see walruses as slow, clumsy, almost comical animals. The indigenous Arctic people did not. They treat walruses with caution, ritual, and respect, not out of superstition, but out of experience. Macmillan's stories unintentionally back this up. Attacks usually happened when outsiders ignored indigenous knowledge and underestimated what they were dealing with. Another important detail here is timing. Macmillan was writing at a point where walruses had already been hammered for decades by commercial hunting. Populations were stressed, wary, and quick to react. Even back then, walruses had to learn that humans equal danger, which likely made confrontations more explosive instead of less. Maybe to me the most unsettling part of this is how casually Macmillan reports human deaths. Walrus attacks weren't treated as freak accidents, they were just accepted risks of Arctic life. And that tells us something important. The people who lived alongside the walruses long term knew exactly how dangerous they could be, similar to how people in India or Africa understand how dangerous the wildlife in their regions could be. So when we talk about walrus attacks today, it's tempting to frame them as shocking anomalies, but Macmillan's accounts remind us that walruses have always been capable of attacking and killing humans. They just tend to do it under the same conditions every time: close proximity, stress, perceived threat, and human misjudgment. Now, the animal hasn't changed really, the environment has, and we have. As shrinking sea ice forces walruses and people into closer and closer contact, those old, half-forgotten lessons from a century ago, well, they start to matter more and more. Now, as I mentioned earlier, modern attacks are quite rare, but that doesn't mean that they don't happen. In the early 1960s, a hunter in Greenland was hauling his kayak and a freshly caught seal out of the sea and onto the ice when a walrus suddenly appeared and attacked. The animal stabbed him with one of its long tusks, knocking him unconscious, but not killing him. After the attack, the walrus made off with the dead seal, leaving the injured hunter behind. They ultimately survived the encounter despite the serious stabbing. This account is actually written in Appendix 3 of Nusurumut, I think that's how you pronounce that, Hunting Families on the Big Head by Kjeld Hansen. And I'm going to read this part directly to you. Kjeld Hansen, it sounds kind of Swedish, so let's do a little Swedish accent here. I just watched Sentimental Value. I think I can pull this off. Okay, so the one that... bad start. The one that turns again. That kind of does sound a little Stellan Skarsgård. Let's keep that up. The one that turns against one is what Uneverk hunters call the deadly, dangerous, or red-brown walrus. This is not Swedish at all. This is a generalized Scandinavian/Russian accent I'm doing here. A couple of examples with fortunate outcomes are given here. Around 1960, Johannes Jørgen caught a small seal at the ice edge off Nustang, where he collected his kayak. As he stood bent over the edge of the ice in order to pull up the seal and his kayak onto the ice, a large red walrus turned up at great speed and drove the end of one of its great tusks through the seal and the other into Jørgen's back. But as one hunter presented remarked, Johann's skin was fortunately tougher than that of the seal, and they managed to pull him up onto the ice. This accent is fucked. This is not even close to anything rooted in reality. Let's just keep going. They actually thought he was dead, but it turned out the violent blow had only rendered him unconscious. The walrus turned up for a moment later with the seal in its grasp, and they thought that it looked as if it grinned at them as it disappeared with its prey. Johannes made a full recovery after the doctor patched him up, and he was able to continue his occupation without any effects. We're getting better at this. Everything suggests that a walrus fears nothing and that he or she is always ready for a fight, even against the most superior of opponents. Accordingly, some hunters have seen solitary walrus attack a school of killer whales. It managed to spread the group after it dived. When the largest of the killer whales... Sorry. I'm just realizing that we have like a not negligible amount of people from Sweden who listen to the show, and I just want to apologize because this is fucking ridiculous. When the largest of the killer whales came into sight again at the surface, the walrus was hanging on its back with the tusk bored into the animal's back. Peter Heilman told of yet another walrus attack with a happy ending, in which his brother Jonathan had taken part. In May 1956, 4 kayak hunters were out in the Davis Strait when a large walrus with long tusks attacked one of them. The powerful animal overturned the kayak hunter, but miraculously, he managed to wriggle out of the kayak and the water and hold tight into the foremost cross strap on the deck. Together, the 3 other hunters managed to kill the walrus, and when they hauled the lifeless hunter up, they could see the walrus had pierced the kayak from below with his teeth just by the cockpit. It's ridiculous. They brought both man and kayak to the edge of the ice by lashing them across the 2 kayaks. In this case, they too were convinced that he was dead and therefore sat alone outside the tent on one of the sledges for 6 hours because none of them wanted to go home and tell the bad news. However, just as yet another pot of coffee was finished over the primus stove, the deceased stuck his head out of the tent and asked for a mug of coffee and a cigarette. Oh... If the American character made me feel like powerful and cool, that weird Scandinavian guy made me feel entirely inadequate, if I'm being honest. Not a distinction. I'm not saying anything disparaging about the Scandinavian people. I want that to be clear. I love you guys. I'm just not quite good at that. So, yeah, sincere apologies. I was fucking terrible. Anyway, in the summer of 2012, we're getting much closer to the present day, National Geographic adventurer Eric Boomer was on an ambitious expedition circumnavigating Ellesmere Island in Nunavut in Canada by kayak and by ski. At one point during the journey, as he and his partner were paddling through icy Arctic waters, a walrus suddenly surfaced directly beneath and beside Boomer's kayak, lifting and rocking it in a matter of seconds. The animal's size and proximity made the moment terrifying. Such a massive pinniped can weigh thousands of pounds and have long defensive tusks. Boomer managed to fight off the walrus by placing his paddle between him and the animal, pushing it away and striking its head to keep distance. And after a brief but intense 10 to 20 seconds of confrontation, the walrus disengaged and slid back underwater. Boomer and his kayak remained intact, and he escaped without physical injury. But the episode underscored both the suddenness of which a walrus can attack and the danger that a small watercraft can face in a walrus habitat. Another serious incident occurred in 2019, this time involving the Russian Navy vessel. Thankfully, I don't have anything to quote here, so I don't have to do a Russian accent. But in September of 2019, during a scientific expedition in the Franz Josef Land archipelago in the Arctic Ocean, researchers and Russian Northern Fleet personnel were transferring from the tug Altai to the shore aboard a smaller, rigid inflatable landing craft. As the group neared Cape Heller, they encountered a female walrus defending her calves. According to the Russian Geographical Society, the animal attacked the inflatable boat, battering it until it sank under the assault. Fortunately, thanks to the quick reactions by the crew, everyone managed to get safely ashore without injury. Russian military statements confirm the aggressive encounter but downplayed the sinking, saying the team withdrew from the walrus without harm to people or animals. Now, most of the stories that we've covered so far are of walruses attacking people while in boats or in kayaks in the open water, and this is indeed when they are the most dangerous. However, there are some stories of people being attacked on foot, and one of these stories is outlined in the book Walrus Hunting in the Arctic Circle, Stories of Hunting in Franz Josef Land by H. Graham Richards. In this book, Richards recounts the following. I don't know the country of origin of H. Graham Richards. Let's go British, because I want to do a British accent today as well. In the book, Richards recounts the following. Jackson and Caldaway write of two occasions where hunters standing on ice several inches thick suddenly saw a walrus smash the ice beneath their feet in order to get at them, and when they ran off for safety, follow them by swimming beneath the ice field, from time to time smashing the ice with a blow of its head at places where it hoped to find the men. Jackson even affirms that he once saw a walrus fling itself from the water onto the ice to charge at some hunters. I have never heard, however, of another instance of a walrus landing to fight. On the contrary, hunters generally agree that a walrus on the beach or on the ice is almost completely disarmed. Nor have I ever heard of an occasion where a walrus attacked a man in the water, but of their readiness to attack a boat with the fury with which they seek to sink it, I have been a witness. My least favorite of the three characters I've read today. Now, this is a very interesting part of the story. One of the most disturbing walrus attacks that I could find, it didn't occur on sea ice or during a hunt, and it didn't even happen in the Arctic. It occurred in 2016 inside a wildlife park in China, in full view of staff, cameras, and bystanders. Now, the park has a name in Chinese. I'm going to try to pronounce this. I believe it's pronounced Shishiaku Wildlife Park in Shandong Province. In this wildlife park, a captive walrus weighing well over a ton was kept in an open pool where visitors were allowed unusually close access. On the day of the incident, a tourist named Jia Lijung, I think I would pronounce it that way, Jia Lijung, don't worry, I'm not going to do any accents for this part, climbed into the enclosure, reportedly to take selfies and a video with the animal. What happened next unfolded within mere seconds. Without warning, the walrus lunged. It attacked Jia from behind and dragged him straight into the water, pulling him under with terrifying ease. There was no dramatic thrashing. It was just a raw mass of momentum. Jia is held submerged under the water and unable to break free. He ultimately drowned in the pool, held down by an animal that outweighed him by more than 1,000 kilograms. But the story actually gets worse. The walrus's longtime trainer, a man who had worked with the animal for over a decade, dived in to try to save the man. Instead of letting go, the walrus seized the trainer as well, pulling both men beneath the surface. Staff on the edge of the pool attempted to intervene, striking the water with poles, but they were completely powerless against the animal's size and strength and lung capacity. Within moments, both men were dead, drowned inside what was supposed to be a controlled, safe environment. Afterward, officials suggested the walrus may not have been attempting to act aggressively at all. What they believe is that it was attempting, from what it had learned, as a form of play or interaction. And that explanation is almost more horrifying than outward aggression, because it highlights the real danger here that animals don't have to even be angry or upset with you to kill you. Sometimes they're having fun, and they think they're just having a little jostle with you, and then you're dead. Now, this incident sparked international outcry, and it raised some serious questions about captive wildlife tourism, lax safety barriers, and of the fantasy that large Arctic animals can ever really be made safe through familiarity. After the 2016 walrus incident in the Chinese wildlife park, the animal itself was not killed or removed from the park, and the walrus exhibit reportedly remained open to visitors afterwards. Park staff and local media noted that the walrus, a male weighing about 1.5 tons and estimated to be over 10 years old, continued to be housed where it had been, with no official reports of it being euthanized or relocated as a result of the tragedy. Now, when you zoom out, the story of walruses and humans isn't one of monsters or malice, and it really never is when we talk about these stories. Very rarely is an animal attack out of malice. It's a story of proximity, pressure, and misunderstanding. For thousands and thousands of years, indigenous Arctic people lived alongside walruses with a clear-eyed respect for what they were. They were essential, they were dangerous, and they were not to be taken lightly. Trouble only really crept in when that respect was replaced with exploitation, curiosity, and an eventual belief that sheer size and wilderness could be managed, fenced away, or trained. From early hunting accidents to modern kayak encounters to fatal incidents in captivity, the pattern barely ever changes. Walruses become deadly when they're stressed, cornered, wounded, or treated like they're something that they're not. They don't need to hunt humans. They don't need to do that. They don't like us. They don't want to eat us. They eat clams and shit and worms. But they just react. And as the sea ice disappears, tourism expands, and humans keep pushing deeper into their world, or dragging them into ours, these encounters aren't just historical footnotes. They're real events that can happen even now. Because walruses haven't changed, but we have. And every time we forget that a 1.5-ton wild animal with spears in its fucking face is capable of, well, the consequences are shockingly brutal. And that's it, guys. My deep dive, pardon the pun there, on walruses, an animal I genuinely did not think I was ever going to have to cover in this show. But really, I do mean it. Special place in my heart for, the classics, the classic man-eater stories. Love hearing about a dude getting his face eaten by a hyena, but, I'm laughing and I'll have to tell you later why. Special place in my heart for those man-eater stories, but particularly, I like these stories of animals that you wouldn't think could be real killers, but they can be. Really, any big animal could be. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back very soon with a brand new segment. So let's listen to some ads, maybe. If you hear an ad, buy the thing. It helps me out, I think. I don't know. Just be a good capitalist for once. Good Lord, go and do a wee. And we are back, my friends. I had the camera die on me in the middle of the episode there. Like, miraculously, right as we went to break. What are we doing? I'll tell you what we're doing. Brand new segment. Sorry, the camera dying really did throw me off. Brand new segment. don't really have a good name for it yet, but currently I'm going with Who Am I? Who Am I? As the title. I don't know if you can think of something better. You let me know. But for now, Who Am I? I was pissed. That's that's what it's a game, guys. Let's just get straight to it. It's a game. I am going to be thinking of an animal. It'll always be a man-eating kind of animal or a dangerous animal. Thinking of an animal, all right? And I'm going to give you 10 hints going from brutal to easy, all right? And you have to guess what it is. So if you can guess on the first hint, that's absolutely incredible. Also borderline impossible, all right? Because it's quite broad. The closer you get to it, the more points you have. So if you guess it on the first hint, you get 10 points. If it takes you all 10 hints, you get 1 point. Points cannot be exchanged for anything. There's no prize here. It's just a fun little thing. We don't have like a little... Do we have a little sound effect? No, that's just clapping. Maybe one of you guys can create a nice little sound effect interstitial that can go at the beginning of the game. Maybe you can sample my voice going, "Who am I? Who am I?" I don't know. Maybe... Or maybe we just dump this after today and we see what happens. Are you guys ready? Are you ready for the hints? Okay. Your job is to guess the animal, all right? Hint 1. This is the brutal difficulty. This animal belongs to a family that split off from cats over 20 million years ago, but the animal is not actually a cat. Okay? Hint number 2. Its closest living relatives include animals that communicate using complex vocalizations and scent marking more than their body language. Okay, hint 3. It plays a major ecological role as a scavenger, often cleaning up what larger predators leave behind. Hint 4. Unlike some of its more famous cousin, this species is usually solitary, and they're not big on teamwork, okay? You might be getting some thoughts going through your mind now what it is. This one might point you a little bit closer. Hint 5. It's mostly nocturnal and has an unusually strong bite force relative to its size, capable of crushing bone, okay? For me, that's the hint that would make me sort of start guessing along the right things. Okay, hint 6. You'll find this animal North and East Africa, in the Middle East, and in parts of India. Hint 7. Surely you're getting close now. In folklore, it's often associated with graveyards, superstition, and shape-shifting myths. All right. Hint 8. We're getting to the point where you should probably start getting this. It looks vaguely dog-like, but it has a sloping back, powerful forequarters, and a pretty unsettling laugh-adjacent vocalization. All right. Hint 9. Most of you probably got it now. Hint 9. This species is more shaggy than its better-known relatives and has long hair that can be raised to look bigger when it is threatened. Hint 10. This is the gimme, all right? Hint 10. It's a hyena with dark stripes running down its body, and it's literally named after that. Can you guess the animal? Did you guess it? Drum roll, please. This animal is the striped hyena. The striped hyena. Did you get it? Let me know. That's a clap for you if you got it. Let me know which hint you got it. You can write it in the comments on Spotify. Let me know what animal hint, which hint you guessed the correct animal. Yeah, even if you said hyena by like hint 7, I'd take it. But I specifically was looking for the striped hyena. Okay, now let's move on to a long-standing segment of the show. Well, I swear I have dementia. I'm just forgetting words left, right, and center. Moving on to a long-running segment on the show. It is, of course, our Scratch of the Day. Scratch of the Day, of course, the segment of the show where we look at animal attack stories in the news and we learn about them together. And kicking it off, quite a big story happening in Australia right now. I know that this was reported internationally a little bit, but in Australia, it is kind of like one of the 3 big news stories that we are talking about. One of our political parties two of our political parties in Australia have an alliance called the Coalition, and they're currently splitting apart, which is fantastic, because I do not like them. The other thing is there's a anti-racism law that's happened and people are upset about it. The third story is the spate of shark attacks that have occurred in Sydney and the New South Wales coast in the last few days. Now, I have actually been posting a little bit about it. I've done a couple of videos about these shark attacks, posted them on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube, so you might have seen me chatting about it. By the way, make sure you go and look me up on Spotify, on TikTok, at Jimothy Chaps on TikTok. YouTube, the YouTube is in the link below, and so is the Instagram, but I'm going to try to post some more videos there as well. But yeah, report on this. So basically, here's the story. About 4 or 5 days ago, a 12-year-old boy was attacked by a shark in Sydney on a beach called Shark Beach, which is, yes, very, very, very ironic. Now, he was bitten on both legs by the shark and taken to hospital in a critical condition. Less than 24 hours later, there were 2 more shark attacks. An 11-year-old boy was attacked by a shark and knocked off his surfboard. Thankfully, he did not have any physical injuries after that. Unfortunately, a 20-year-old surfer was the third victim. He was also attacked by a shark while surfing and bitten on one of his legs and taken to hospital in a critical condition. He's not doing too well, apparently. There was also a 4th shark attack on the far north coast. I believe Port Stephens, I think it was, or Port Macquarie. I think it was Port Stephens. No, Port Macquarie. Definitely Port Macquarie, sorry. So 4 shark attacks within a few days of each other. A couple of those attacks within 24 hours. Really unusual. That's kind of like the key word here, really unusual. It's strange for this to have happened. Now, the reason that experts believe this has happened is there has been a heavy downfall of rain in those areas in the last few days, like a significant amount of rain that has made the water incredibly murky and difficult to see, but it's also washed fresh water and salt water together, making it brackish. This is relevant because the type of animal that we think is causing these attacks is the bull shark. In fact, I believe that is now confirmed that a bull shark was responsible for at least one of the shark attacks that had occurred. So bull sharks are, I believe, one of, if only the only sharks that can live in fresh water and salt water. They are known for frequenting rivers and estuaries, as well as the ocean. And when there's a lot of water, a lot of rain coming down, those rivers swell, those sharks can travel between rivers, through estuaries, into the ocean. So that is one reason. They're also an incredibly aggressive species of animal as well. They're one of the big 3. The big 3 for shark attacks being the great white shark, the tiger shark, and the bull shark. Very territorial, very aggressive. Now, because the water is so murky, we also think that this is a case of, budge and bite, basically. So like they nudge the person and then they bite. It's a curiosity thing. They're not really necessarily looking for food. It's also murky and hard to see. They could be mistaken identity, thinking people are food. So that's kind of the big story. I don't really need to read like a news story here because I've covered this before. You can go watch my videos sort of reporting on what happened as it was happening. But the pivot now is that we're talking about in Australia shark culls, which I was really worried about this happening. I kind of knew this would be the case after such a media frenzy about the sharks. It's really easy to blow this stuff out of proportion. We've seen it happen so many times before. The Summer of the Shark in 2001, the Jersey Shore shark attacks. Yeah, like when these things happen in like quick succession, it is kind of like, it is shocking. But people really can blow this out of proportion. 4 shark attacks is very strange, but it's not that strange. People are swimming in their territory after heavy rains. Waste is being washed out into the thing. There's a high proliferation of fish in the area as well. So not particularly surprising that this has happened. So they are talking about whether or not they should do a shark cull. From the number of polls that I've seen, and by polls I mean like statistics, not the people from Poland, the number of polls that I've seen, it seems that the majority of Australians are against the idea of a shark cull. It does seem to be quite reactionary. A couple of high-profile politicians, including like former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, has urged for there to be a shark cull. My personal belief is that it's not necessary. There's really no need for it. I do think it is reactionary. It's coming out of a desire to get revenge, almost. I don't think that culling the sharks is going to lead to people being more safe. Like once the conditions in the water return to normal, the likelihood of a shark attack on the beaches is phenomenally low. I don't think that by culling the sharks in the area that likelihood drops any further. It's already super low, And if you can just follow like basic safeguards for yourself, don't go surfing right at dawn or dusk. Don't piss in the water. Don't go into the water if you're bleeding. Swim between the flags. Look out for shark sightings. That kind of stuff. You're already minimizing your risk. Yeah, I don't even want to do a devil's advocate thing here. I think that people are being really reactionary in calling for a shark cult. I think that the people who are calling for it really don't know what they're talking about, and it's just coming from a desire to do something, and that is understandable. When when nature attacks, when things happen in nature, there's a human desire to like take control, because that's what we do. We love to take control of things. But time and time again, we've learned you can't control nature. Like that's it. How many goddamn movies and stories have we seen about this exact theme, that you can't control nature? It doesn't work like that. When things like this happen, we feel out of control. We feel uncomfortable because we can't control what's going on. So we look for ways to grasp control back. And a shark cull is a way to make us feel like we're doing something like that. I'm not 100% against every kind of animal cull. There are, of course, exceptions to the rule where it might be necessary. I just really don't think that we're at a moment here where it is necessary. It does seem to be purely out of spite and just this longing to be able to do something and try to get some kind of revenge as well. So that's kind of where we are. I did hear an update. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's progressed since then. I did hear an update about the first victim, the 12-year-old boy who was bitten on both of his legs and taken to the children's hospital in critical condition. I did hear that he was in a very bad state. I read somewhere that he was essentially brain dead and that the family was sort of preparing for the worst. I don't know if that has happened yet. I don't know if he's passed away. I hope not. I hope that what I read was just like a mistake. I don't know, or he could rally. But it does seem likely that this is going to become a fatal shark attack, which is not, again, like if you're arguing against shark culls, it's not going to help. But, it is what it is. So, I'm not a prayer guy. Maybe you are. And if you are, that's great. So let's just say it. Thoughts and prayers to everyone who was attacked by a shark and is still recovering. Let's just hope that they can, pull up okay. We're going to talk about a couple other attacks in Australia, including another suspected dingo attack on Gari. In the past, I've pronounced this island as Kagari, but it's not Kagari. I also just realized that this is locked behind a paywall. So let me tell you what I know while searching about the dingo attack that has occurred. So essentially, the body of a Canadian girl was found on the beach in Gari, surrounded by a bunch of dingoes. It's a suspected dingo attack. Basically the question is, did this Canadian woman drown in the beach and wash up and then was surrounded by the dingoes, or was she killed by the dingoes first? That's kind of the question. We're not really sure. I have found from AP an article we're going to read here so I can get all my facts straight. So the AP writes, authorities were trying to determine on Tuesday whether a Canadian woman found dead on an Australian beach had been killed by dingoes. The 19-year-old woman was found on a beach in Gari, formerly known as Fraser Island, on Monday. Police said her body had been interfered with by the native dogs. I think we can infer what that means. But police would not speculate on the cause of death, saying her body had been discovered 90 minutes after she went for a morning swim on the world's largest sand island off the Queensland state coast. Police were called to the beach near a shipwreck, a popular tourist attraction, at 6:35 a.m. Two men were driving an SUV along the beach when they saw around 10 dingoes near the body, Police Inspector Paul Algie said. Quote, it was obviously a very traumatic and horrific scene for them to uncover, Algie told reporters. I can confirm there were markings on her body consistent with having been touched and interfered with by the dingoes, he added. A post-mortem examination of the remains a post-mortem examination of the remains to determine the cause of death was expected to be completed on Wednesday. Quote, "We simply can't confirm whether this young lady drowned or died as a result of being attacked by dingoes." The woman had been working at tourist accommodation on the island for about 6 weeks. 3 years ago, a pack of dingoes mauled a 23-year-old jogger in an attack police said was almost fatal. The dogs had driven the woman into the surf before a tourist came to her rescue, beating off the attackers. Police said the man had saved her life. Around 200 dingoes roam free on Gari, and a protective native species at the World Heritage listed national park. The younger animals have become more aggressive and less fearful of humans since tourists returned in large numbers following the COVID-19 pandemic. So yeah, a couple of things to just mention there. You look at a dingo and you think it's a dog. I believe the traditional consensus here was that dingoes were, genetically dissimilar enough from domesticated dogs that you didn't really refer to them as a dog. In a similar way where like you don't really refer to a wolf as a dog. I acknowledge, I think that dingoes and domestic dogs are genetically more similar than wolves and domestic dogs, but I think that they are still different enough that distinction still serves a purpose. The only reason I bring this up is that towards the end of last year, I remember reading a story about politicians trying to redesignate dingoes as a type of dog, as a type of like feral dog almost. The reason being is that it makes it easier for you to cull them. If they are a form of dog, they can be considered a nuisance or a pest, and it's easier for them to then be shot and killed and hunted, which is unfortunate because they are they are endangered, I believe, but they are a protected native species. There's not a lot of them, and they do play a major ecological role, particularly in mainland Australia as well. They are like one of the only animals that keeps the kangaroo population in check, which stops the kangaroos from decimating the grasslands. They also eat all the rats and rabbits and stuff like that as well. So no, dingoes are definitely necessary. But getting back to the story, so yeah, this 19-year-old girl found dead in Gari. We don't have a conclusive yes or no on her cause of death. If I was a betting man, I would say I think she probably drowned, was washed ashore, and then the dingoes. It sounds like they started gnawing at her. That's kind of what it sounded like. I believe it seems like people got there before feeding started. I think so. So yeah, Gari is probably the hot spot for dingo attacks in the world, obviously, and in Australia. I mean, that makes sense. So stuff like this does happen, and they happen with an increasing frequency. But if this is a fatal dingo attack, that would be the first one in a few years, which is very sad. It's very sad, anytime a tourist or a foreigner is killed here, because it just, it gives us a bad name. We already have a bad reputation as like the country where every animal wants to kill you. I've made my feelings on that, fallacy pretty clear in the past. So I don't particularly enjoy when things kind of compound that. All right, final animal attack story we're going to talk about. Again in Australia, all three stories in Australia today. A man in his 20s was attacked by a crocodile near Ingham in northern Queensland. So basically, a man has been rushed to hospital after being attacked by a crocodile in North Queensland. Emergency services were called to Ingham Forest Beach Road at Victoria Plantation in the Shire of Hinchinbrook before 9 a.m. over reports of an animal-related incident. A Queensland Ambulance Service spokesperson said the man in his 20s suffered a puncture wound to his back, legs, and one of his hands. It is now understood that he was taken to Ingham Hospital in a stable condition and is now being transferred to Townsville University Hospital. No one else was injured. Queensland Department of Environment, Tourism, Science and Innovation is the agency responsible for crocodile management and is now understood to be investigating the incident. Palm Creek, which runs near Ingham Forest Beach Road, is known by locals to be crocodile country. Hinchinbrook Shire Council Mayor Ramon Ejeo said Palm Creek was regarded as crocodile country. He said the attack was concerning. Quote, "I would like to commend the quick thinking actions of community members and frontline responders who assisted the injured man," he said. We have even seen a 6-foot crocodile walking around Lucinda after making a home in a local stormwater drain as recently as Sunday. The attack comes amid a push from Queensland government for more removals of the reptile in the state's north. The plans include active crocodile removal at Taito Wetlands in Ingham Centre and for the area to be proactively patrolled by Queensland Parks and Wildlife Rangers. Mr. J.O. said he supported the legislation but warned against complacency. At the end of the day, we need to be aware that we're in croc country, he said. The bottom line is stay out of the water and stay away from the water's edge. I think that's a really good message for the mayor. Like, I mean, that makes sense. You got to remember where you are. Like, don't live. This might sound naive, but right. Don't live in crocodile country if you don't want to see crocodiles, you know? Or don't be surprised when you get attacked by a crocodile if you go for a swim in the water where you know that the crocodiles live. I'm not saying that that's what this guy was doing. I actually don't know what he was doing at the time of the attack. But it's like, you know, Bob Catter. He's this Australian politician. I used to have him on my soundboard because he was the one who would do the, let 1,000 blossoms bloom as far as I'm concerned. But I ain't spending any time on it because every month and a half a Queenslander is ripped apart by a crocodile. This is kind of what he's talking about there. He's pissed off again, by the way. He wants his crocodiles taken care of. You know, I'm generally against animal culls, and I don't think this is another case where we need to have one. But I'm glad that the guy seems like he's going to survive it. Just a reminder, this whole episode is just a reminder to be like, hey man, we're not the only ones living here. We are not the only species living on this planet. In Australia, we live with sharks on our beaches. We live with crocodiles in the rivers up north, okay? And if you're on Gari or in the outback, you live near dingoes. You need to accept that. You have to just deal with that fact. It's the same with with the walruses. You live with walruses. They can attack you. You have to be careful. You have to know what you're doing. Same anywhere else in the world. I think we in quote unquote the developed nations, Australia, the US, a lot of Europe, really we get a little bit too big for our boots. We think we're special, and we're not. Europe, I guess, not so much. I mean, they do have bears in Europe, but North America and Australia, we have fucking predators. We have crazy dangerous animals here. Don't get complacent just because you live in a city. It doesn't mean that the rest of the country does. And we're not the only people living in these countries. Or we are the only people living in the countries. We're not the only animals living here. There's a bunch of animals who were here way before we were here. And frankly, they're going to be here long after we're gone as well, unless we fucking kill them all. So yeah, that is our scratch of the day. Sorry for that weird little tangent there. So gang, that is the end of our episode. Really quickly want to give a shout out to everyone on Patreon who is supporting me. Like I said sort of at the outset, my employment situation has changed. I've kind of quit my main job to focus more on stuff like this. So anything you can do to support the show would be much, much appreciated. So head over to Maneaters, patreon.com/Maneaters and support the show. If 50 people gave $5 a month, I'd be set. Or if one person gave me $10 million once, I'd also be set. And honestly, I'm happy with either one of those. I have a slight preference towards the $10 million one because I think it's more. But you know what? Anything you can do would be great. Go follow us on all the social media channels. YouTube, of course, this video, will be on YouTube, so you can go watch it there. Instagram, TikTok, Jimothy Chaps, go there. Instagram, Jimothy Chaps at Maneaters, all that good stuff, all that social media bullshit you can do. And yeah, let me know if you enjoyed the new segment. Who am I? Maybe you can make a little interstitial. I don't know if anyone's good at that. Let me know if you got the animal. And that's the reason I laughed before, by the way, because I stupidly gave an example of an animal I like as a hyena. It was on my brain because I was looking at the word hyena in my script. So that's what that was. Great to be back in 2026, gang. I love your faces. And please, for the love of Christ, stay safe out there, gang. Because as we've learned, it's a jungle out there. Hooroo.